Louisville is fresh off their worst season since 1997. But can a new head coach turn things around in 2019? Find out here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but last year Louisville football was just really hard to watch. The Cardinals went 2-10, winless in ACC play, and had those 10 losses come by an average of 31.9 points per game. They fired Bobby Petrino, and now Scott Satterfield from Appalachian State comes in to try to right the ship. And he inherits a fairly good team for 2019. The offense returned 6 starters, including their quarterback in Jawon Pass, but he was a guy that I was not very impressed with last year. And granted, nothing was impressive about this Louisville football team last year. But Pass has had a little over 1,900 yards through the air, 8 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. So not very good stats there. The offense, led by Pass, averaged just 19.8 points per game. One thing that does benefit this offense, on top of having Pass back as a experienced quarterback, another year under his belt, they do return Seth Dawkins and Des Fitzpatrick at wide receiver. So he has 2 of his top wide receivers back that can maybe give this offense a little bit of a boost they need to try to average more than 20 points per game in 2019. But the defense is what's going to be the strength for Louisville this year. They returned 10 starters on that defensive side of the ball. This is a defense that allowed 44.1 points per game last year. So really anything is going to be a major improvement in 2019, and I would expect that coming out of a Scott Satterfield-led team. Unfortunately for Scott Satterfield, his first game with Louisville is going to come against Notre Dame, a team that made the college football playoff last year, a team that has one of the better quarterbacks, I think, in the nation, in Ian Book, who really took some major strides at Notre Dame last year. Was not the starter at the beginning of the season, but once he got that starting job, you saw a drastic change in the Notre Dame offense and a drastic change in the way that Notre Dame team played. The defense will once again be solid under Brian Kelly, and this is going to be an opening season loss for Louisville and the first loss of Scott Satterfield's time at Louisville. It really is a tough way to start. It reminds me a lot of how Jeff Collins is going to start his time at Georgia Tech, opening the season against Clemson. It's a tough game, while some coaches are getting opening up against a cupcake team. But that cupcake team comes in week 2 against Eastern Kentucky. Louisville should take easy care of them. And you notice how we didn't put an automatic W by Western Kentucky in week 3. That's because last year, Louisville faced the Hilltoppers and only won by 3 points, 20-17, having to come back by a 2-touchdown deficit. So this win is not automatic by any means, especially if the offense is still struggling much like they did last year. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they take care of Western Kentucky again for the second year in a row, and they do it by a bigger margin. So they start off the season 2-1, and things are starting to maybe trend up a little bit, even though those 2 wins aren't over major programs. They get their first ACC game of the year on the road against Florida State. This is a game that Louisville should have won last year. They fell to the Seminoles 28-24, had the ball deep in Florida State territory with the lead, and continued to throw. They had the game iced. If they had just kept running the ball and then they would have kneeled it, the game would have been over. But they threw the ball, it got picked off, Florida State went down there and scored a game-winning touchdown, won the game 28-24. Keep in mind, this Louisville team, as bad as they were last year, Florida State was pretty bad too. Unfortunately for Louisville, this Florida State team is going to be much more improved, and Louisville is not going to be that much improved to match Florida State like they were last year. Last year, I felt they were pretty even. But this Florida State team, led by Willie Taggart in year 2, has 16 returning starters. Their offense is going to greatly improve, and so will their defense. Across the board, Florida State is going to be much more competitive and much more tough to beat. With this game being on the road in Tallahassee, I don't see Louisville getting a big-time win here. They fall to the Seminoles, and they are 2-2. They get a bye week going into the Boston College game, which they are lucky to be hosting at home. This is a game that really I do believe Louisville could win. I think Louisville could very well pull off this upset. Boston College's offense is going to be tough to stop. And if you remember last time Boston College was in Louisville, A.J. Dillon went off, rushing for 272 yards. So this defense is really going to have to step it up for Louisville to shut down A.J. Dillon and force Anthony Brown to win this game through the air. The Boston College defense is usually strong under Steve Addazio, but the offense will be the strength in 2019. If this Louisville offense takes some major stride, and Scott Satterfield's offenses usually are fairly productive and tough to stop, then maybe they can get a win over the Eagles, especially with that weaker rest. But I just don't see that happening. I think Boston College is the better team. I think that offense will be tough. Even with 10 returning starters on defense for Louisville, this game will be close, but the Eagles get a win on the road. A loss for Louisville here. On the road against Wake Forest, also coming off a bye. And if you've watched our predictions before, you know how big I am on bye weeks and how important those can be for a team. So Wake Forest coming off a week of rest, with that game being on the road against the Demon Deacons, I don't see Louisville winning this one either. And the key for Louisville this year is going to be their defense. The defense is what's going to keep them in these games, and they're going to have to try to give as many opportunities to Jawon Pass and this offense to try to win those close ones for them, if they can even be more competitive than they were last year. This game against Wake Forest, though, they have a very solid offense led by Jamie Newman, who kind of came onto the scene late last year for the Demon Deacons, but led them to that bowl win over Memphis. They have Cade Carney at the running back position and 2 solid wide receivers. This Dave Clawson team is not one you want to screw around with. The Cardinals, unfortunately, lose to Wake Forest on the road. And then they absolutely lose at home to Clemson. Last year on the road against the Tigers, they lost by 61 and allowed 77 points. So yeah, maybe those 41 or 44.1 points per game are a little skewed because they allowed 77 in one game. But they do not stand a chance against the defending national champions. They gave them a fight a couple of years ago. That was an instant classic between Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson. But both of those guys are gone. It's a new era for both of these schools. Louisville falls to the reigning national champs and the best quarterback in the nation in Trevor Lawrence. They remain at home facing off against Virginia, who is absolutely the real deal. Some people aren't buying the hype in what Bronco Mendenhall is doing with this Cavalier squad. And if you're not buying it, you better start buying it, because they are the real deal in the ACC Coastal Division. They have one of the best defenses, not just in the ACC, but in the nation. That's right. I'm saying Virginia has one of the best defenses in the nation. And they returned Bryce Perkins at quarterback, a very dangerous dual-threat quarterback who was solid in 2018 but is going to have even better stats in 2019. This Virginia team has their sights set on winning the Coastal, especially after the way they ended last year, winning 28-0 over South Carolina in the Belk Bowl. This game, even though it is at Louisville, I don't think they're going to be able to stop this Virginia team who's just super talented across the board. Louisville loses another one in ACC play. A bye week before they go on the road against Miami, and unfortunately for Louisville, 3 of their final 4 games are on the road. And 2 of them are against fairly difficult teams, in my opinion, in Miami and Kentucky. You go up against the Hurricanes here, who, like I mentioned with Virginia, has one of the better defenses in the nation, especially now that Manny Diaz is their head coach. If you watched some of our videos in the past, you saw where I ranked Manny Diaz as the top hire of the 2018-2019 offseason, or the 2019 offseason, I should say. He's the top hire, the best coaching hire going into this season. He boasted one of the top defenses at Miami during his time as defensive coordinator there. As a head coach, I don't expect anything different. Now he brings in Dan Enos as offensive coordinator, and they have this guy named Tate Martell. And Dan Enos is quite the quarterback whisperer. Even though Louisville has a week of rest, and you heard me say how big I am on that, Miami is going to have a solid turnaround in 2019 after a disappointing 2018, and I think they take easy care of Louisville in this game, especially with this game being on the road. So a loss for Louisville there. On the road against North Carolina State, a team that loses their star quarterback in Ryan Finley, now going to rely on Matt McKay. They lose their star rusher. They lose a couple of their top wide receivers. They're going to have a major change on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, though, will be the strength. Like Boston College, this is a game that I could possibly see Louisville winning. A game that maybe they could pull off an upset against a North Carolina State team that will be solid once again over Dave Doran. Wouldn't expect anything less, but still has some issues and some things they have to work out. So this is a game that is winnable for Louisville, without a doubt. But it is on the road. I think this defense for NC State is going to be too much, and Matt McKay is going to have things worked out by late November. Louisville loses here to the Wolfpack. And now they're just 2 games away from finally finishing the season and once again look on track to another 2-10 season. They faced off against Syracuse back at home. Last year they lost to the Orange by 31 points. And this is a game that has 2 very solid defenses. This game could actually be fairly low scoring. But Syracuse certainly owns the offensive edge, led by Tommy DeVito. Yes, they lose Eric Dungy, but no worries whatsoever for the Orange. Tommy DeVito had plenty of playing experience. He's just a sophomore, but he looked great during his time as a freshman last year. I think Syracuse comes on the road, takes easy care of Louisville once again. They're not going to win by 31 like they did last year, but they will win by double digits. Another loss for Louisville. And they close out the season against Kentucky, and when you face a rival, you just need to throw records out the window. Louisville could be winless and still give Kentucky a fight of their lives. Same for the Wildcats. So this doesn't matter, the fact that Louisville is sitting at 2-9 going into this Kentucky game. All bets are off. They could pull off an upset here. And people will say they can because Kentucky lost Josh Allen, because they lost their leading rusher all time in Kentucky history in Benny Snell. But they do return Terry Wilson at quarterback, who didn't put up great numbers in 2018, but I expect to take major strides in year 2 under this offense. And they return Lynn Bowden, their top wide receiver. Mark Stoops, a defensive type of coach. I would expect this defense, even though they lose quite a bit of star power there, to remain relevant and to remain one of the top half of the SEC. They also, Louisville lost by 46 last year, and I don't see that drastic of a turnaround in 2019. This game's on the road. Kentucky gets a win over their rival yet again. Louisville loses this game, and they go 2-10 for the second straight year. And I know this is not what Louisville fans want to hear. But unfortunately, this could very well be the case. I have a lot of faith in Scott Satterfield, and you have to give new head coaches time to get their players in shape. You have to give them time to implement their offense, to implement their defense, and the schedule certainly doesn't do Louisville any favors. They're facing 2 teams that made the college football playoff last year in Clemson and Notre Dame. They are facing an improved Florida State team on the road, a Kentucky team that won 10 games last year, a Miami team that's improving greatly, a Virginia team that's going to be a contender in the Coastal. This schedule does not do any favors for Louisville, for a new head coach, and for an offense that has a lot of things they have to work out after averaging less than 20 points per game last year. So the Scott Satterfield era will get off to a rough start in Louisville, but just be patient with him because he is certainly the right man for the job. So guys, as always, thank you for watching. Make sure you check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, and check out our website in the description below, thegridironexpert.com. Go sign up for our newsletter. Check out the videos we have posted there, and sign up for our expert picks. It gives you every single one of our spread picks for the 2019 season, including the postseason. That's 150 spread picks for just a one low-time fee. I promise you're not going to regret it, and you certainly don't want to miss out on that. Guys, thank you for watching here on YouTube as well. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.